Welcome to today's #Wednesdays Weeklies, a weekly information session in collaboration with the voluntary sector and public sector partners. Today's session will be delivered by Paul Whitehead and is all around the Rochdale Borough Warm Spaces programme. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Hayley. Yes, I'm going to be speaking about the Warm Spaces programme, and I've got a few slides which I'll just take us through, and then there'll be some time at the end for any questions. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, so I can't actually see anyone because I've had to come through Zoom on the browser. So if anyone needs to interject, then obviously just please do so, and but there will be some space at the time for questions. So yeah, as I said, I'm speaking about the Warm Spaces programme, but it's probably worth just mentioning that it's part of a broader approach. So it won't be, you know, everyone's really acutely aware at this point that we're in a cost of living crisis. So there's been quite a lot of work that's been happening around trying to alleviate the impact of that. And what we've been focusing on, so at least in the short term, over the winter, is two key priorities. One is around warmth and shelter, including fuel poverty. And there's been a range of projects and programs around that, warm spaces being one of those. And the other one is around money maximisation, including food and nutrition. So again, there's been a whole range of programs that we've been doing in collaboration with the voluntary and charity sectors and other partners around trying to ensure people have more money in their pockets and make their pounds go further, and also ensuring people get access to food. So for example, our food clubs, food banks, food pantries, etc. So that's part of what we've been focusing on over the winter, and obviously that's still very much in process. And then we have a longer term ambition around creating a strategic plan around poverty, which will hopefully be getting to grips with more fully in the new year. So that's part of the broader kind of vision, really. So yeah, warm spaces. So as I've said, yeah, the national cost of living crisis has resulted in just real pressure on people across the country, but particularly people in Rochdale. And we've got one of the ways we've been characterising our work around helping people around the cost of living crisis, the Helping Hand campaign. So you may have seen, if you've had a look at any of our social media profiles, this kind of big hand that's kind of holding people up, and that's the Helping Hand campaign. And part of that is we're working with local partners to create a network of warm spaces across the borough, and this includes libraries, leisure centres, community centres, other places. So what are warm spaces? So warm spaces are places where local people can gather for free in a warm, safe, welcoming place, enjoy a drink, activities, and access to other services. And they're free to use effectively. So we know that many people are struggling to heat their home. It's really expensive to heat your home right now. It's feeling quite cold. So these are places people can come and stay warm, but also do other things as well. You know, they should be able to get some help if they need it, get a hot drink. Some of the warm spaces are putting activities on. So yeah, and it's quite a varied offer so far. So some venues are offering particular activities. Some are able to offer Wi-Fi. For example, the leisure centres are offering showers. So each warm space, you know, has a kind of has its own individual offer as well as some kind of standard offer, really. And we've created a directory of all the warm spaces across the borough, and I'll tell you where that is in a moment. So what is this minimum offer? So if somebody comes to a warm space, what can they expect? And we've laid this out in what we've called our Warm Spaces Charter. So any place that becomes one of our official warm spaces has to agree that they'll deliver these particular things. So if anyone comes to a warm space, they'll get a warm welcome. They'll be treated with dignity, respect, and confidentiality. So we know that actually it's quite a thing might be quite a thing for people to attend a warm space. You know, there could be some stigma attached to that. So each of our warm spaces, you know, is going to ensure that we're treating people with dignity and being sensitive around confidentiality. And each warm space will be each warm space for everyone, so there'll be no one will be excluded, and it'll be a non-judgmental space. And yeah, we're not going to be asking questions about why you need to go to that warm space either. So there's not particular criteria. If somebody feels they need a warm space, then they're able to come and get that without no questions asked. And each warm space, we're asked to provide a minimum of a hot drink, a cold drink, some activities, advice, and signposting. And some of those activities, I've said, they're pretty varied, really. So some warm spaces are putting on specific, you know, groups and things, whereas others might just be putting a few board games out or a few magazines. So it's quite varied. Each warm space will be open a minimum of 10 hours a week. Obviously, some are open much more than that, you know, our libraries, for example. But we're saying that each warm space open a minimum of 10 hours a week. And each warm space will have undertaken a health and safety assessment. So that's what you get if you attend in a warm space. So I suppose the next question is, what's the process if you have a venue or an organisation you want to become a warm space? So some of it is already there in the charter, but you need to be able to have toilet facilities. You need to be able to provide snacks, hot drinks, and cordial or water. You need to be able to provide some activities such as books, magazines, or games. You need to be open a minimum of 10 hours a week with consistent opening hours. So we really want each venue to be consistent, so they're not opening different times each week, so people know where they can go at a specific time. We want each venue to have an understanding of the cost of living crisis and how it affects people. And that's to ensure that, you know, if somebody comes in and actually they really need help with something, they need to know where to go to get debt advice, or, you know, or where they can go to get a food parcel, that the venue has some knowledge about that and is able to offer a conversation with that resident and signpost them to where they can get that additional help. Each warm space needs to agree and have the ability to communicate under difficult circumstances and very different circumstances. So we could imagine that some people coming to warm space might, you know, might be in a difficult space, and therefore a difficult conversation might need to be had. So we want each warm space to be able to do that. And yet we want each warm space to treat everyone with dignity and respect, keeping things confidential, and have a risk assessment in place. So yeah, I'll just say a bit about where we're up to with the Warm Spaces programme. So we launched on the 9th of November, and it's been quite an iterative launch. So we've been bringing venues on each week. Currently got 32 venues signed up. We're aiming for a maximum of 50, so there's another 18 spots. And we're trying to now, because we have those 32 signed up, and we're trying to make sure that we get a good spread across the borough. So some areas have more warm spaces than others. So we are trying to ensure that there's a good spread across the borough, and there's a good varied offer as well. We've established a warm spaces network. So this is a meeting that we have where all the warm spaces can come together and share best practice, share any issues that arise in. We're providing each warm space like a resource pack, and we've it's been Action Together that have pulled it together for us. produced some winter warmth packs, and those they've been put in each of the warm spaces. So that if somebody comes in and actually they need a blanket, or they need, you know, gloves, or they need a particular warm winter warmth pack, they're able to get that from that warm space. We've also made extra funding available for the voluntary and charity sector. So there is specific funding around warm spaces. So, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But there is also extra funding available for other projects. So, for example, if you know, if you want to create culturally specific winter warmth packs, or funding for cost of living projects, all that's available. And there is a specific grant for warm spaces, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So yeah, currently our deadline is the 16th of December. That may get extended depending on how we do. Like I said, we've got 32 venues and we want to get 50. And there's a link here, and I think Heidi's going to put all the links in the chat about where you can find all the information I've just mentioned, and and there's an application form on the webpage listed here if a venue wants to become a warm space. Yeah, so as I said, any applications from a warm space will be reviewed, and we've been visiting each venue just to check that it's suitable. And if approved, there's a £500 grant that we're offering, and you'll get added to the warm spaces directory. And the idea of the grant, we know it's not a huge amount of money, but it may help a space improve it in a particular way, so that we're able to be a more effective warm space, get some games in, buy catering equipment, for example, if they don't have a tea urn, that kind of things. Obviously the grants are not to be used for staff costs. And yeah, this is the final slide. So all details about how to become a warm space, more details about warm spaces can be found at the link there in the presentation. Hayley will put that in the chat. And yeah, and now I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any. I'll just stop sharing my screen.